I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your host, Jamie Jackson.
Hey lurkers, welcome to this week's episode. For this episode, I'm going to retell some of the stories from my house, which is haunted. I know I covered it in episode 11, but that was like 2 years ago. So I want to retell some of those main stories and update you on some of the things that have been happening recently. Things have kind of escalated in a way. I do have some EVP to share with you that I recorded, I think the end of August. No, the end of September is when I recorded those. So I am going to share those with you. They are unedited, so not very clear, but chilling nonetheless as far as I'm concerned when I'm sitting in a room by myself and there are things talking to me that I can't see. So my house is located in a small town on a main road, which is why sometimes you may hear some road traffic. I do my best to delete it or use noise reduction to get that out of there because it's irritating. But sometimes it can be pretty loud. So it's on a main road. We have been able to date the house back to the 1880s. There was a gentleman who came to town and made a lithograph print of our town, and he did that in 1888. Our house is on that map. So we know the house was here in the late 1880s. We have not been able to date it past that, simply because when we were in the process of doing that, COVID happened, and nobody could go to the courthouse to do any kind of deed search or anything. So that's kind of stopped for the moment. So the house we know was 1888. We know there was a gentleman who purchased the house early 1920s. He did some renovations. He added on to the back of the house, and he added some bay windows to the house. This gentleman died in the house. He had a stroke, and he died sometime later after that. He was divorced, so he was here by himself. I'm really not sure how long he was here before they discovered that he was dead. Hopefully it was pretty quickly. I don't even want to think about that, to be honest with you, so moving on. In addition to that gentleman passing away here in the house, I know that there have been at least 3 funerals that were held here in the house. So back in the day, when somebody died, they had the viewing in the parlor, and the body was in the casket laid out for everybody to come and view. They didn't have the funeral parlors back then. They came into the house to do it, and there were 3 dead bodies in our living room. Little tidbit, living room came about because of that whole thing. I don't remember the exact way it came about, but it's to denote it that it is a room for the living. Not always here in my case in the house, but whatever. When we first lived here, honestly, my husband lived here first. The house used to be apartments. There was a downstairs apartment and an upstairs apartment. He lived in the upstairs apartment. He moved in not long after we had started dating. There was always kind of like a creepy feeling here every now and then. You kind of felt like you weren't alone. So I, of course, did what any ghost hunting girlfriend would do, and I brought my digital recorder over here and tried it out. And I did get some EVP recordings. Nothing spectacular, but enough to freak out my now husband. Fast forward, our landlady passed away. She was, I think, either just shy of 90 years old or just shy of 91 years old. And she passed away, not here in the house. We managed to get the house, and we have since converted it back into a single-family home. There was a lot of renovation. There's still renovation. It is never-ending renovation when you own a house that's over 140 years old. We started hearing footsteps. Sounds like people coming up the steps, somebody walking in the hallway downstairs, and that was the first few things that happened. Pretty minor in the scheme of things, unnerving to say the least. And then things escalated to the point that my son, who was 12 at the time, had just started walking home from school on his own. He was old enough to do that. No longer, at the babysitter. And he got home one day and he called me in a panic and said that somebody was inside the house. He was barricaded in his bedroom upstairs with the family dog, who was a large 75-pound chocolate lab. And he had put things in front of his door and had his baseball bat. He was pretty upset. So I'm like, how do you know? Didn't you lock the doors? And he said, yes, I locked the doors. There's somebody down there. And while he's talking to me, he's like, they're going into the kitchen. I hear them in the kitchen. They're doing something in the kitchen. They're coming down the hall. They're coming down the hall. They're coming to the steps. They're coming to the steps. And he was panicked. So I said, all right, I have to hang up with you for a minute. And I'm going to call your grandfather. I'm on my way home. So I'm 20 minutes away at work. I called my dad. And as luck would have it, my dad actually was on his way home from somewhere. He was only like 2 minutes down the road. I said, hey, Ethan called me. He thinks somebody's in the house. The dog's not barking. So that led me to believe that there was nobody in the house because she barked all the time. But I said, can you please go there? So my dad rushed to the house. I'm on my way. I call Ethan back. I'm like, your grandfather's coming. He'll be there soon. And in the meantime, he's upset. He's still hearing the footsteps. He's hearing somebody downstairs. They kept going into the kitchen. Sometimes they'd go towards the dining room area off the kitchen. They'd come up the hallway like they were getting ready to come upstairs. And finally, my son's like, Poppy's here. That's what he calls my dad. He said, Poppy's here. So I'm like, all right, stay in your room. So I hear my dad finally come up to my son's door and he knocks on the door and pushes the door open. I think there were umpteen Nerf guns piled against the door or something. Not that they would keep anybody from getting in the room. And my dad gets on the phone and he said the house was locked. The front door and the back door were both locked. He said, there's nobody in the house. There's nobody here. So I don't know what was going on, but everything's good. So I get home shortly after. My dad waited with him. And that was the first time that it seemed to really freak out my son, at least. It freaked me out. I was upset because at first I thought there was actually a person there, but he was beside himself. After that, one of the other things that happened to my husband, which is kind of humorous because he's very skeptical of everything here. He's gotten a little bit better about that as he's experienced things. Every now and then he'll kind of give me a look or whatever when I talk about something. But for the most part, he has moved into the believer category. So it was a summer day. And just so you know, before we get into this little story, my husband is an HVAC technician. He installs and repairs heating and air conditioning. That's important to know. So we're at home one day, sitting in the living room. It's probably 90 degrees outside. And this is in the time before there was central air downstairs. The only thing we had downstairs was the furnace. We only had heat. Recently we've upgraded, but at this point there was only heat downstairs. So we're sitting there, 90 plus degree weather in the summer, and the furnace blower turns on for no reason. My husband gets up, checks the thermostat, He ends up going in the basement. It shuts off. It's never done it since. He has no explanation for why it would do that. He asked other friends, co-workers in the business. Nobody had an explanation. And we've never experienced it since. But I was happy that he experienced something he couldn't explain, because it kind of pushed him towards the believer side of things. We've also, the lights have flickered. Now, the electricity was upgraded in the downstairs part of the house. That still had knob and tube electricity. So that was all replaced when we first got the house. The windows were replaced. The knob and tube wiring was replaced. So the electricity is up to date. And every now and then we would have issues with new lights. My husband blames the light bulbs. I don't know. There's a meme out there that says, when you have an old house, blame the ghost. It's easier to blame the ghost than to think about the really expensive repair that your house needs. That's kind of what I do. I would rather be like, oh yeah, totally the ghosts. Hole in the ceiling, the rain's pouring through, it's totally the ghosts. That's just the way I am. The other things that happened, which as far as I'm concerned are more unnerving than the footsteps. The footsteps don't bother me. If you all are listening to me, please don't go walking around tonight. I really need my sleep. That was not an invitation. Yes, I talk to the ghosts in here all the time. In fact, I feel like there's somebody behind me now, which I'll get into later. Anyway, so then a couple times in the middle of the night, it was just my husband and I at home, and we just had the one dog, and she was in the bedroom with us. And my son was not home. Nobody else is in the house, and we're asleep, and something or someone has knocked on the door loudly and jiggled the doorknob. Like, we could see the doorknob jiggling. And this happened one time where I heard it. Actually, I think it was about 2 times where I heard it only, and my husband did not wake up. And I actually thought maybe I was dreaming. Maybe it woke me up and I was dreaming about it. And I laid there and listening, and it didn't happen again. Then the second time it happened, I was actually awake when it happened. And they knocked, jiggled the handle. I'm looking over. I can see the doorknob handle moving. The door was not locked at the time. And then they knocked again and jiggled the handle. And then another time it happened, my husband did wake up. And he kind of woke up and he's like, what was that? And it happened again. And, you see the doorknob turn. And I said, somebody knocked on the door. He's like, well, there's nobody home. I said, I know. The only thing living out in the hallway area that it could be is the cat. And the cat doesn't have an opposable thumb and can't turn the doorknob or knock on the door. You could tell the knock was coming from human height. I said, go see who it is. And he's like, I'm not going to go check. There's no way I'm checking. I'm not going. You go see who it is. And I was like, I need you to go look and see who it is, because now I have to pee and I am not going in the hallway. Well, he wouldn't check. And I waited as long as I could and went out into the hallway, and there was nobody there. The doors downstairs were locked. Nobody was in the house. That hasn't happened since that time. And if you all are listening, don't do it tonight. It's not funny. I don't like that. So that's one thing that really upsets me, because you're kind of vulnerable when you're in bed and asleep and something is banging on your door and there's nobody else there to do it. Then there is the story, and I'm pretty sure I've shared this before, where I was in the process of decorating for Christmas. I think this was 2021. And I had the bins lined up in the hallway downstairs. I went to I was in the dining room, and you can go from the dining room into the kitchen. And when you walk into the kitchen from the dining room, immediately to your left is the doorway into the hall where the bins are. So I walk from the dining room into the kitchen and turn to go into the hallway to get more stuff to set it out. And there in front of me is a translucent figure. I could tell that the upper part was like a white shirt. The bottom part was like a dark blue. The hair was shorter but feminine and a light brown sort of color. It was not a solid object. It was translucent. And the figure was a little shorter than I was. And it was rummaging through my bins, my holiday bins. So that actually upset me. Not upset as in terrified. My aunt had passed away the year before. I have still a lot of her holiday decorations, and she liked to decorate for each holiday in her house. Her daughter, my cousin, puts a wreath on the front door. That's her Christmas decorations. I kind of felt right away that that's who it was. So it didn't scare me. It just is very unsettling when you turn the corner and all of a sudden you come nearly face to face with a spirit. It doesn't matter whether you believe or not. That's unnerving at any time, in any situation. So it disappeared. You know, kind of, I made some sort of noise. I don't know what exactly I did. But I made some sort of noise. It went away. I went in the other room, settled myself down, and went about decorating again. Recently, so now we're going to get into some of the more recent things that have happened. Renovation in the house has gone on off and on. So we were working on our downstairs bathroom. It had to be completely gutted, and the tub was ripped out. There was a leak, so it was taken down to the studs. And my dad is doing the work, and my husband did the plumbing stuff, so it's kind of like a tag team sort of thing. But the majority of the work my dad's been doing. So he got sick for a little bit and was not doing any work. There was really no renovation happening at all. And then after 2020, of course, the government gave us a bunch of money, and I was like, let's go get the tile. And we started getting the bathroom worked on again. I am a firm believer that if you have an older home and you start changing things, it can start some paranormal happenings, because if whatever's there is familiar with the home or has lived there before, they may or may not be happy with what you're doing to their house. And I think it stirs things up. Anyway, just to let you know, there are renovations going on. We have put in the 2 new build windows. The steps that went to the upstairs apartment have been taken down. There's a window where the door used to be. The bathroom's being worked on. It's about halfway tiled, roughly. So recently, I was decorating for, I want to say it was this last Christmas, that I was in the middle of decorating again, or getting ready to decorate. And I was walking, I had the bins in the hallway. That's kind of, where I stage everything. This is my staging area. So I started walking up the steps upstairs. And when you walk up the steps, you can look into the kitchen from the doorway from the hall into the kitchen. You can see in there up to just past halfway up the steps. So I'm walking up the steps. I'm almost to the halfway point. I'm looking down, glancing down into the kitchen. The kitchen light was on. It was dark outside. And I see that same figure that I had seen previously walk from like the area of the dining room doorway across the part of the kitchen that I could see and disappear. The only thing over there on that side, it moved from right to left. The only thing on that left-hand side is the door to the basement. Nobody goes in the basement. The basement is awful. I hate the basement. Nobody goes down there, and the door sticks. It's the original door. It sticks. You have to pull it open. There's like a funky latch on it. It makes a lot of noise. So I don't know where the figure went. Through the wall outside. I have no idea. It disappeared. But it was that same figure. I just was like, whatever. No problem. Just recently, a couple months ago, I was sitting in the living room and saw a different figure. I was in the recliner, and when you're sitting in the recliner, you can look from the living room through the large entryway into the dining room and into the kitchen, like kind of diagonally. You can see all the way through into the kitchen and see a small portion of the kitchen. And I caught movement and looked, and there standing, I could see like from the torso up, because there was a table there, like they were standing at the table, was a silhouette of what I felt was a male presence. It seemed male. It had short hair, or it didn't have any noticeable long hair, but it was a silhouette. Kind of like a shadow person, but not with that negative feeling of a shadow person. I only mean that it was black, kind of, just a silhouette. In the meantime, and it disappeared. So I look at the couch, because next to me on my left is where our couch is. And our two dogs, Lucy and Angus, are sitting on the couch, staring intently into the dining room towards the kitchen, where I had just seen that figure. They are trying to figure out what's going on. When it disappeared, they both went running out to the kitchen and started sniffing the floor in the area where that figure would have been standing. So I know I'm not alone in seeing that. I know the dog saw that. And just a little side note, Angus, the bulldog, my ride or die in dog form, he growls at the steps often. There is nobody there, and he is growling. One time I thought it was the cat. The cat comes from the other direction. It's not the cat. He hackles up, staring at our steps, growling. And he does that every now and then. I really don't like it when he does it when I'm by myself, as far as no other humans in the house. It's unnerving. So we've had the revisitation of the Christmas figure, who has shown up for the last 2 Christmases in a row, hoping to see them again. Then we have the dark silhouette figure, which is the first time that's ever shown up. Then while I'm in my room, on many occasions, and it's currently happening off and on while I've been sitting here, I get incredibly cold on the left side of my body, not the right side. And it may have something to do with how I'm sitting, but I feel as though it's the very left side of my thigh. I'm describing this now because I'm feeling this now. And my left shoulder and down my left side, almost like there's somebody standing right here next to the chair. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something different here, and I'm going to pull out the digital recorder that's sitting right here, and let's just record and see if we get anything right now, because I feel like I'm not by myself. This is Jamie. Is there somebody in the room with me? Would you mind saying something? I don't have that feeling anymore. Let's see if we got anything. I don't know that we did.
This is Jamie. Is there somebody in the room with me? Would you mind saying something? I don't have that feeling anymore.
Okay, guys. Sorry. I guess they did not want to talk to you. Anyway, I had a problem with my digital recorder a little while ago, and I had to completely reset it. So I wanted to see if it was working, and I turned it on. And I'm going to play that first one here for you. There's nothing here. It's just a demonstration to show you what happens when you do a recording and it doesn't pick anything up. This only records when it hears a sound to record. Kind of like the one I just did. You know that I took long pauses, but there was no pause in between my questions. So here's the first one.
Anybody here with me?
Nobody was there. So then here is the next recording.
I feel like it's
So then I continued to record because, hey, why not, you know?
You want to talk to me? Can you tell me your name? Are you the reason why I have chills up and down my back? Are you a relative? Are you touching my back?
I don't know if you caught that, but I said, are you touching my back? And it seems like it's giving me an affirmative answer. I don't know yet. Like I said, none of these are edited. So here is the next one.
I'm going to record one more time. Tell me your name. Are you male or female? I think you might have left.
You notice the questions are like boom, 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 one right after the other. But I didn't stop.
Are you back? Are you done talking? Are you male? Are you female? Can you try to tell me your name again? You're behind me again, aren't you? Oh, are you touching my back? We're talking.
So there you have it. That was what happened here in the office with the EVP. It definitely answered the questions that I was asking. I was feeling like somebody was touching my back. That is incredibly unnerving. However, it was during daylight hours. It was probably about 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon. I had come home from work and went straight to work on the recorder. It also seemed to try to give me its name. It affirmed it was touching my back. It seemed to allude that it was a relative or something. Again, I did forget to mention, I have a family heirloom. It was my great-great-grandmother's rocking chair here in this room. And after I brought it home, Kelly kindly said, hey, yeah, I always thought that was haunted. The rocking chair I have caught rocking when I've entered the room. I've caught it moving. It hasn't done it in a long time. This room is a mess right now, so maybe that has something to do with it. But most of the time I feel like I have family here surrounding me. One more thing I wanted to tell you about was I put out my Halloween decorations, and in the bathroom I have this little ghost figurine. It's 3 ghosts high, and you turn it on and it's motion censored. And I purchased it to annoy my husband and my son, which it did after the fact. But when I first put it up there, I'm going to play what it sounds like. And it's a video, which I will post online on social media, so you can see what I'm talking about. But I recorded this because of what happened. You can see in the video, it goes off because I'm standing there, and then I try to get it to go off again, and it takes a little bit. I have to actually get pretty close and wave my hand in front of it. So I'm going to get this clip ready. Okay, so that's it. That's all the clip is. I just want to demonstrate there's a pause. I actually was pretty close waving my hand in front of it to get it to go back off again. So when I put it up in the bathroom, it went off, of course, while I was standing there moving around, and I left the bathroom and closed the door and went downstairs. And while I'm downstairs getting ready to put more Halloween decorations out around the house, this stupid thing starts going off continuously, constantly. There was no stopping. It was one right after the other. And the dog, Angus, is cocking his head to the side like, what is that? Who's up there? And I yell up the steps to knock it off. Knock it off. It's not funny, leave it alone. It stops. So then a few minutes later, it starts doing it again. And this time I yell up the steps and I'm like, this is not funny. It's not funny. And I said, okay, well, it kind of is funny, but enough. It's getting on my nerves. And it stopped, and it hasn't done it since. It was on for a couple of days. It's turned off now because every time my husband and son went into the bathroom, it was going off and they really got irritated with me. So I turned it off until we have people over for Halloween. But it was on for 2 or 3 days before I turned it off, and it never did that again. It only went off when somebody was physically, a human who was alive was in front of the toilet or in front of that shelf. So those are some of the things that have happened here lately. Hopefully with Halloween coming and with Christmas around the corner, there may be some more things that happen. You know that in some of the episodes there were mysterious sounds that were picked up on the actual recording that happened here in my office at the house. So hopefully in the future we get some more of that. Maybe pick up a few more EVPs. I don't know. But that's going to do it for this episode. As always, you can find Lurk wherever it is that you find your favorite podcasts, or at lurkpodcast.com, where you can find the episodes along with our social media links. If you have any suggestions for topics, please feel free to email me at lurkpodcast@yahoo.com or message me through any of the social media messengers. And until next time, keep lurking.